Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Radical Center. How's it going, Cody? How was your week?
It was going great. I think Mariah Carey is out of storage because Christmas is just around the corner.
It is. It's so exciting. I cannot believe that, the end of the year is also around the corner. December is here, Christmas is coming, all the holiday season, all that excitement. But also, that also means January is coming and winter is coming as
Yep.
as Jon Snow says. So I am not looking forward to that part. Lots going on this week. Lots going on this week. I honestly, when we were deciding what to talk about in this episode, we had to really figure out what would be the best topics to cover because there's so much going on. We've got a scandal by a federal minister, Randy Boissonnault, I believe. And I believe that's how you say his last name. And I feel like this guy, well, I'll let you talk a little bit more about what the scandal is and what Canadians need to know. But I feel like this guy got a little bit of a long grace period, don't you? Like, I feel like he was popping up on my feed, and like nobody's doing anything about it. And then finally Trudeau decided to tell him, you got to step away from cabinet at least until you go out and clear your name, which is, I guess, the standard thing to do these days with ministers who get themselves in trouble. But tell us a little bit what you think about this. We're calling it the Randy scandal, and how much impact is it going to have on Justin Trudeau overall?
Well, this is something that's been happening since the summer. A couple of things happened during committee. There was allegations of corruption, fake identity, and even again allegations of drug busts being involved. That's all allegedly, of course. Kind of hard to follow. But what I'll do is I'll say is that what really continues to strike me about this is that in the dying days of the government or dying months of the government, um, Trudeau never really takes any quick action to stop controversy. Like I said, the Randy controversy, the scandal has been happening for months.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And earlier this week, it came out that he was claiming to be Indigenous, or his company allegedly got contract deals that would only be awarded to Indigenous companies.
Yeah.
And that happened for a few days. Um, but then, like, Trudeau didn't do anything until he got back in Ottawa and realized, oh, shit, this is actually bad. I better do something. So, you're gonna name this episode. I think you said maybe Trudeau has learned his lesson. Maybe
Yes.
he has. Maybe he hasn't. I don't know. But it's just really interesting. It's a lot of inside baseball. But at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, it goes to the heart of why this government continues to grow so unpopular. It's because these scandals happen, and it's a lot like Joe Biden and his administration in the US. Um, you could completely screw up your job and nothing happens.
Yeah, I feel like he has been generally slow to react. His reaction time is a little bit slow. Like I said, I feel like this guy got a very long grace period, and it took some time for Trudeau to actually do something about it. Let's talk about another interesting Trudeau moment, I guess. Again, this episode will be called "Did Justin Trudeau Learn His Lesson?" I think he did, but let's talk a little bit more, and we'll see what you think, and hopefully what we'll hear from our listeners, what they think. Immigration changes. He's talking about how he recognizes that he's been slow to act on immigration. Like I said, I think he's been slow. To be fair, I don't think he's made too many significantly horrible decisions, but I think he's been slow to react when there needed to be leadership and a strong reaction. This is certainly one of them. Canada is a country that needs immigration. There's never going to be Canada without immigration. Our birth rate is just way too low. Canadians, don't even have enough kids to replace themselves. So, you're going to need a population, you need a workforce. That's why Canada will always need immigration. So, but the question is how much, when, where, all of these details that the federal government has to really, really, work hard to ensure that they get them right, because otherwise there's consequences, specifically to the economy and specifically to the housing market. What do you think about this? Do you think his apologies, or not apologies, but I guess this was a bit of an apology, but his, moments of recognizing that he's made mistakes, do you think that makes a difference? Do you think Canadians are kind of like, you know what, I like a prime minister who will come back and apologize? Or do you think that Canadians are looking for leadership that's, going to get it from day one, and they're not going to make mistakes?
I've wrestled with that question myself. Immigration has, in one form or another, has always been a form of discussion in politics since Justin Trudeau took over as prime minister. Now, I really struggled with this because, what do you focus on? Do you focus on the fact that people have been raising alarms about immigration levels for a very long time? Or do you talk about the human impact of immigration? And what do I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that? When it comes to somebody who is coming to this country for a new life, they could be escaping war, persecution. They could be seeking a better economic life for themselves. And Canada has always been a country that has accepted immigrants from all different countries around the world. Now, we promise them the Canadian dream. If you come here, you get a job, you work hard, you get an education, the possibilities are endless. The problem is, and, we see this in Brampton a lot, there are bad actors that set up fake colleges that profit off of luring students into this country. They
Mm-hmm.
lure people here so that they can make their money, and these immigrants are left on their own. That
Mm-hmm.
puts pressure on housing, puts pressure on the job market, and I think that we have to really understand here that there are a lot of immigrants that will come to Canada and ask themselves, is this really the Canada that was promised to me? And in a country that is so diverse, I believe that there are a lot of people who will ask themselves, is this genuine? Or is this just a political ploy? And
Right. Yeah.
so that's kind of where I see it as.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you could talk about the entire discussion going back since Trudeau took over, because immigration has been in the conversation for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think it's more important to focus on the people that are being given false hope, coming to this country,
Mm-hmm.
studying, doing all the right things, but at the end of the day, they can only afford to be jammed in a basement full of 20
Yeah.
other people. So, and it's not just Trudeau's fault.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of, as the Ford government has been calling them, scumbags, right? Because that's what
Mm-hmm.
they are. They're profiting off of people's vulnerability. So I think that's where the conversation has to be.
Yeah, and I think that became, of course, a much bigger issue since COVID, when you no longer necessarily had to provide actual space for students. Now you could do things virtually, you could do things online. So that opened the doors for a lot of expanding of private colleges that was not necessarily meeting a particular demand. or even providing good quality services and education. Um, but it's interesting. I think you're right. Immigration is always a conversation in this country. It's, there's people who are anti-immigration. There's people who are pro-immigration. The reality is, you know what, we're always going to need immigration. It's just a matter of how do you make sure that you have the right formula. And you're absolutely right. It's terrible that people are coming here and they're like, this is an absolutely terrible place to live. I can't even survive. And they're having to go back. And we've heard those stories, and we don't want that. We don't want that for our country. We want our country to be this amazing place that people come and they're able to achieve their dreams. I'm an immigrant myself. I came here when I was young with my family, and I've been able to achieve a lot in this country, and I want that for other people. So hopefully we get the right formula in place. I do agree that there is a little bit of a question whether, I guess, how genuine Justin Trudeau is with his remorse, you could say. But I think we'll see. We'll see over the next few months if he continues to do things that are more popular and less ideological, that more appeal to the centrist voter. We'll see. Like our next issue. Once again, did Trudeau learn his lesson? Justin Trudeau's tax cut and the $250 rebate. So the rebate will be $250 for anybody who makes $150,000 or I guess less than $150,000. And the tax cut will be on GST, HST. It's a tax holiday, not a permanent tax cut, but between December 14 and February 15. Am I getting that right?
Yep. Day after Valentine's Day. How
Yeah.
convenient.
Yeah, exactly. You get all of your shopping done. You make sure that your loved ones are happy and satisfied, and you get a little bit of a break. I like this one. I think he's done a smart thing here, especially because he needs to get away from being the prime minister who is constantly, raising taxes, especially since the carbon tax specifically has been so incredibly unpopular among voters, and that's cost him a lot. So now I see this as, I honestly think he's learned his lesson, or he's learning his lesson. I think he's trying to change the channel. He's trying to be like, you know what? I am a centrist leader. I can, lead, an economy, and not just be that ideological in terms of taxation and what I want to accomplish in this country. What do you think, Cody?
I mean, two episodes ago, I had mentioned that when Trudeau talks about social issues, um, it's because he's trying to distract from his failing record. So
Mm-hmm.
I kind of have like a new rule now. When his lips are moving, assume he's not telling the truth. Now, while I'm happy that families are getting like much needed relief in their pockets, I think we all feel that this could have been done a lot earlier. Um, Even at the announcement, the deputy prime minister, Chrystia Freeland, said that they knew prices were higher throughout the year, and yet there's been crickets
Yeah.
throughout all of PMO until now. I think that the Liberal government, they're trying to fix a problem that they're partially responsible for. Their inflationary spending helped increase prices. Their immigration policy is ruining the Canadian dream for
Mm-hmm.
immigrants. And their housing policy is demolishing housing supply in real time. And I mean, like, don't even get me started on Jagmeet, because just a few months ago, he was telling us that it was the big corporations like Loblaws that were price gouging us, and that
Mm-hmm.
the only way to stop that was socialist price controls. So it's just weird that we didn't hear from him about that. I think that the general sentiment from people that I talked to between Thursday and now, is that they like the idea, but it's not going to
Yeah.
change their vote. Um, but the most interesting question I got from a number of people To paraphrase it, is um, Cody, do they really think that we're that stupid? And
Mhm.
my response has always been, yes, of course they do. Of course they do. Now, a lot of people would say, Cody, that sounds a little bit hypocritical because you had supported what the Doug Ford government was doing with the $200 check, $200 checks. And the difference between Trudeau and the Ford government is number one, the financial state of their respective budgets. And
Mhm.
number two, Doug Ford is doing it from a position of strength. He's very
Mhm.
popular in the polls, and he has been, leading the way, getting rid of license plate stickers, um, fees on public road tolls, and Justin Trudeau is doing it from a position of weakness. We were told, um, not last August, but the August before, in their cabinet retreat, that there was going to be major changes to policy moving forward on every single file. And
Mhm.
the only question I'm going to ask politically is, is this too little too late?
Maybe I could see that, except if there's actually major policy changes on every file. And the thing is, and eh, Pierre himself is not very popular. He's got you know a particular style that it doesn't really appeal to a lot of people. Um, and he is more right wing than your average conservative these days on a lot of the social issues that progressives care about. So if Justin Trudeau makes up with the average Canadian, if he figures out a way to be like, you know what, I'm not this big bad guy who's going to ruin your pocketbook. I'm not going to do anything drastic that Canadians are not going to like again. And if he gets people to believe that, he may actually be able to come back on top. And it's not because he's going to be popular. It's because people aren't really that warm towards Pierre. He comes across a little bit as a bully. He comes across, a little bit as too much attention seeking, specifically for a leader of the opposition. I think a leader of the opposition shouldn't spend as much time on Twitter as he does. He doesn't need to be speaking that much. He can certainly take a bit of and also he needs to, for a while he was really, really clear about, his agenda and what he was going to do. And it was all about housing and the economy and the carbon tax. And now he's veering off into issues that aren't necessarily going to be super, super popular. And people may just go back to Justin Trudeau because they just don't like the other guy, and things might just, naturally get better with the economy, as they are getting better, right? So people are going to start feeling that relief. You're going to start seeing a little bit more activity. Interest rates are going down. That's always a good thing, and that always makes the government more popular. I don't know if I'm ready. I mean, I did write him off before, but now that I'm seeing him, doing things differently, showing up with remorse, and actually doing things that you don't expect him to do. Like, I did not expect Justin Trudeau to announce any tax holidays. That was just not something that I thought he would do. But he did. Now, let's segue into provincial politics, because you brought up Doug Ford. So Toronto's saying, we've talked a lot about this bike lane situation. I think a big fight is going to break out between Ford and Toronto over these bike lanes. So Toronto's saying it's going to cost them $48 million to remove the bike lanes. That's a lot of money. Doug Ford is saying, not so fast. You're making that up. I don't believe you. He used some harsher language than I did. you know, where do you think this is going? Like, what's going to happen here?
So I'm gonna generalize it. This is a
Hmm.
staff report, obviously. So this is city staff coming up with you know an approximation of what they think it's going to cost. Um, or maybe I could just ask you this:
Hmm.
when you were, because you have more experience in government, but I'd rather ask the question to you. When you were at the school board and you had a report with a dollar amount attached to it, what was the first thing that you did with that report when it landed in your inbox?
Well, you always question, if what the actual dollar amount is, and oftentimes it is higher or lower because things do happen. You have to keep in mind especially with things like construction, the timelines are always difficult to stick to. Whenever we would be building a school, um, there would be a lot of room for changes because you don't know what's going to happen. Now, building a school is a project that would take a few years, a couple of years at least. But that's not the same thing with removing bike lanes. I would imagine removing bike lanes should be a pretty easy thing, but there's also a lot of them. And you also have to keep in mind that a lot of the individuals who would be the workers who would be actually doing this work would likely be unionized workers, and labor is very expensive in Canada. It's especially expensive for government. So while it's a lot of money, would I believe that it could hover around that number? I would believe that. Because there are a lot of bike lanes, because labor is just expensive in Canada, in Ontario
Okay.
especially.
So it's fair to say that you would still question that number, right? And you would ask
Of course.
you would ask staff, where did they get their numbers? Did
Yeah.
you How did you do your homework, right? So that's I've experienced before, especially criticizing a lot of the wasteful spending that the last Brampton City Council um, made. When I would see a report that didn't make any sense, I would ask
Hmm.
basic questions, right?
Hmm.
Where did you get this number from? Is this something that you tallied up on a sheet of paper based on your own research, or is this something that you approached uh, past projects, or is it something that you approached companies that you do contract work with? So I don't think it's $48 million. I think there is a significant chance that it's a lot lower than that. The one thing that I will say is at the meeting when they had passed this bullshit, one of the things that Olivia Chow had made clear is that they wanted city staff to find a way to push back against the provincial government. So it's not
Yeah.
inconceivable to me for city staff to interpret that as, well, I better come back with a number that um, may not be the most expensive, but still to the average person might seem expensive. And I'm not saying that's what happened in this case. What I
Hmm.
am saying is they're not procuring the project yet. They haven't passed the motion, or they haven't went out and sought contracts to get rid of the bike lanes. So that's what
Hmm.
I want to see. I want to see what the provincial government is going to pay companies to remove the bike lanes, because I really don't believe that $48 million number. And I could be wrong. But
Hmm.
as a skeptic, as somebody who does care about taxpayers' money, as somebody who has been, I wouldn't say tricked, but I would say who has questioned
Hmm.
city staff before and have gotten significant pushback because I was right. I'm very skeptical of that number. But it is very popular. Again, we talked about it. What, like, at the end of the day, is the pushback from the downtown city of Toronto going to be big enough to change the broader um, public sentiment? And I don't think it is at this moment. Otherwise, they
Yeah.
would be reversing course.
Yeah, and I agree with that, but I think there is there is an element of the number being too big for the average voter. I don't think people are going to all of a sudden love the bike lanes. I think they'll still be pretty upset about them. And I think they will, see that it's, not necessarily the best use of taxpayer dollars, but I think, there will be a number that would resonate in the average voter's mind as it's too expensive to do this. I don't know if the anger would be directed at Ford or it would be directed at the people who put the bike lanes in the first place. And I think that's more likely where that anger would go. But even, would you feel more comfortable if it was $20 million? Because, it's going to be a big number. It's not going to be like 10 grand, right? Like it's going to be a big number.
Well, personally, I don't really care what number it is, just get rid of them. But my
Oh, wow.
point, yeah, my point
Yeah.
was, because it
Yeah.
was bad policy to begin with. It was bad
Right.
policy to begin with, and it's easy for the Ford government to say, look, you guys screwed this up in Toronto, and now it's
Mm-hmm.
costing us more money to come in and remove it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's an argument that the Ford government could ask, or sorry, could say, is that you guys screwed up. You knew it was only
Mm-hmm.
popular in downtown Toronto. So yes, it's going to cost a lot of money to remove it
Yeah.
because you guys put it there in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's the way I look at it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm only one person. So
Mm-hmm. No, I think a lot of people would agree with you. I think a lot of people would, agree that, yeah, they're going to cost a lot of money to get rid of, but, we still don't want them there,
yeah,
right? Like, well,
like
what do we do?
like
We can't just like,
I'm sorry. Again, we're going on and on about bike lanes, but
yeah,
I mean, whatever. This is our podcast. We could do whatever we want. Listen, in Brampton, they started the whole bike lane thing during COVID, right? They put
yeah,
it in temporarily to, you know, get people to be out, be active, and whatever. The signs said that they were
mm,
temporary, and then
yeah,
I guess the city government at the time thought that it was popular to make them permanent. And
mm-hmm,
then they used the analogy or the excuse to say that it would be safer, it would slow cars down. And then they decided that they would make it permanent and that they would do it throughout many more parts of the city.
yeah,
And now there's significant pushback, including in the area that I used to live in. Even the city councilor in that area, who, he's pretty much a centrist on all this stuff,
mm-hmm,
he's come out now and he's saying like we got to get rid of them. I support what the Doug Ford government is doing. So that's what I would say is it's going to be a big issue. It's going to cost
yeah,
a lot of money to remove some of these big bike lanes, and it's going to cost even more money if the province exercises its power and says we don't like bike lane A, B, and C, and they're going to get rid of it. But again, at the end of the day, the Doug Ford government, they could say, look, it was a bad idea to begin with. The reason why we implemented this legislation is because we need to change some of these terrible policy mistakes. And that might require paying a lot of money to get rid of this
mm-hmm.
problem.
Yeah, and I think you can always, make the argument about congestion. There's a lot of congestion. There's a lot of traffic. People are sick of it. And I think he's going to run on that he's going to get people to places faster. I can kind of see it. It's kind of starting like, we're going to be the anti-congestion. We're going to fix your traffic problems, and it's going to be popular. Honestly, traffic sucks in the GTA. You can't go anywhere. Even in Mississauga these days, you can't go anywhere. Anyway, we've got one more topic that we're going to quickly touch upon before we say goodbye to our listeners. Mr. Ford, once again, he wants a bilateral trade agreement with the United States, and he wants it now. He doesn't want it in 3 years. What do you think of that, Cody?
So from my understanding, and I think the premier's I believe he said the premiers are unanimously in agreement with this move that he's taking. We know that there's going to be a new administration in January in the United States, the Trump administration 2.0.
Hmm.
And trade is going to be a big issue. Um, it, I guess that the Mexican government is figuring out a way to import cheap Chinese parts through the back door, and then they use it to trade amongst the new USMCA trade agreement. So I think politically, what they're trying to do here is they're trying to say to the new Trump administration, look, you guys are not getting shivved by the Canadians on trade. Look at what the
Hmm.
Mexicans are doing. They're importing Chinese parts to be imported into the US and into Canada. So the
Hmm.
Ford government, what they want to do is they want to have a bilateral trade agreement with the United States. The Alberta Premier is also going to be going to the United States to speak with the incoming Trump administration to do an energy deal. So that's what they're doing. They're trying to get ahead of a problem that
Hmm.
um, may or may not come up, and I think it's really smart.
Okay, well, there you have it. That's what that's all about. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us. Our big topic, I guess, of today was, or our big question of today was, did Justin Trudeau learn his lesson? Do you believe that Justin Trudeau learned his lesson, or do you think it's all some sort of, pre-election campaigning, um, you know, uh, attention-seeking stuff? Why, I don't know what you think, but do let us know. Reach out to us and let us know if you agree with me that Trudeau maybe is learning his lesson, or if you agree with Cody that it's not happening. He's not learning his lesson. Thank you again for joining us today. We'll be back next week with more on Canadian politics, provincial politics. And if you have particular questions, as always, do reach out to us again. Thank you and
All right.
have a wonderful day.
Take care.